Now we're ready to shade in each of our thumbnails. Okay. So the instructions ask you to shade in the negative spaces of each thumbnail, which is going to be all of the space around the figures with a high key value between 3 or 4. So let's pull out your value scale and see how we've labeled the top of the scale from 9 being the darkest to 1 being the lightest. And the white of the paper is the border, is the space around, basically the negative space around the scales. Okay, so I don't want you to include the white of the paper as part of your value, right? Also, look at how your light value covers the entire square. When you're doing a density scale, then you have lines, and so you do have some of the white of the paper showing on, between the lines. But when you're doing a blended area of value, there's no white of the paper showing underneath, right? So you have to take more time to render your lighter values and not be lazy and just let the white of the paper show through and not bother doing any blending. Okay, so when I'm talking about your high key values, I'm referring to your 1 through 4. You can clearly see that these are lighter, right? So high key is lighter, and then your low key values are the darker values, about 5 through 9. Those are your low key values. Your middle key values are these middle values right here, right? So they're not too dark, but not too light. Okay, so for your negative space in each of these, I asked you to choose a 3 or a 4, right? But as you can clearly see, there's a big jump between this 3, 4 middle kind of high key middle value and the white of the paper, right? So I'm going to demo this so you'll see what I'm expecting. And then for your square and triangle, the instructions were to choose for your positive shape the triangle and your positive shape the square 2 different values. So for 1, any value between 9 and 6. So let's just say we're going to choose a 9 and a 6, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just label these. So I'm going to do the negative space. I'm going to use a B pencil just to label it so I can see it, a 3. So I'm going to do the negative space of 3 on all of them. And then I'm going to do the positive space, which are the figures. I'm going to do a 9 for the triangle. And I'm going to do a 6 for the square. Now it'll get pretty tricky to see what happens here. Now, it's really super convenient to cut your scale out. This is not sprayed, so it's going to get smudged. So before you handle anything that has graphite or charcoal on it, you should spray it with fixative spray. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. Okay, so by cutting my value scale out, I can use it as a tool to compare to the values where I want to create darker and lighter values. So as you can see, the 9 is the white of the paper, and so there's the highest contrast is occurring between the 9 on the scale and the current state of the triangle. I've gone ahead and zoomed in so I can show you the pencils that I'm going to use. I've chosen a 5B for one of my low-key values, the 9, and I've chosen the B for the 6. And then for the high-key value, I'm going to choose a 2H. Okay, so I've chosen 3 different pencils. So one is the high-key, the 2H is the harder tip, and it's going to be the lightest. The 5B is going to be the softest. There is a 6B, but I'm choosing 5B instead of 6B. So if you want, you can use a 4B or a 5B to do your 9, but I'm choosing or a 6B, but I'm choosing a 5B. And then for the 6, I don't want to go 5B because that's very soft and dark. I'm going to go B, which is softer than the 2H, but not as soft as the 5H. So I can control the medium value. The 6 is going to be more like a medium value. Okay. Now, about your pencils, the tips aren't very sharp. They kind of have a blunt, the very tip is kind of blunt. So it's really, these shapes are kind of small. It's really important that you sharpen your pencils before you start. I keep a cup, right, so that I can sharpen right into the cup. I'm going to shade in my negative space first with a 2H. To keep the parts of the paper that I want to stay white covered, I just stick a sheet of paper underneath my hand. Also, it helps you prevent smudging the graphite that you've already laid down on the paper around and just making your drawing look messy. Okay, so rendering this much space will take a while. So try to take your time. You're not just learning about compound shapes here. You're also learning how to shade with graphite, right? And the best way to learn how to shade well with graphite is to practice. So this assignment is utilizing both the concept of compound shapes so that you can learn how to use compound shapes in your designs and recognize them in your peers' artworks, but you're also learning how to practice blending and shading with your graphite pencils. So we said this was going to be a 3 or 4. On your value scale, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4. And you see how I can compare them? So I can see that my negative space is successfully a 3, right? Because I'm comparing it. You can see that the 1 is clearly lighter than the 3. So for the 9, I know it's going to be dark. So I'm going to grab my 5B pencil, make sure it has a sharp tip, and cover up your paper so that your hand doesn't smudge your paper. Here's an example of a completed compound shape relationship sheet with 8 thumbnails showing all 8 compound relationships with the negative space in each thumbnail completely shaded in a 4 with a high key value of about a 4 on a scale of 1 to 9, and the triangles are all shaded in at a 9. You see how I'm using the value scale as a tool to line it up against the values that I've rendered to make sure that they match the value that you were asked to shade. And then the squares are about a 6, 7. So each square is a consistent value. And then in these two squares where you have a subtraction, I left the dotted line, but because the triangle that is coming into contact with the rectangle is actually cutting away the shape, this right here, the section of the square that's shaded in, is the leftover positive shape, and everything else is the negative shape. And when the intersection, the point of the intersection is to discover the shape that occurs when you intersect two different shapes. And so this becomes the new positive shape, and everything else becomes the negative shape.